Hello, hello, Andryanna here. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Juggle is Real podcast. I'm really excited to share this conversation with you because I love meeting people who are doing really exceptional things and leading life with such purpose and passion and vulnerability. And my guest today is doing just that. Zoë Pawlak is an artist and an industrial designer who was born and based in Vancouver. She's really rooted in painting, and through line in her work, her unique capacity is to maintain a strong personal aesthetic while maintaining a commitment to telling the truest version of her stories. Zoë is a local entrepreneurial leader, a speaker, and a passionate, community minded person. She believes that great work tells the individual narrative with an honest vulnerability that allows the viewer to step into a shared narrative that they can then claim as their collective truth. Zoë has been featured in architectural design, interior design, and Martha Stewart Living. She's presented works at ICFF, West Edge, Ad Design Show, and IDS West. Pawlak's paintings are in the private collections of the Government of Canada, Christina and Trevor Linden, Kobe Smulders, and Club Monaco. She is such a beautiful person, and she's recently introduced this Vessels and Muses Oracle deck, which is a 40 card deck crafted through intuition and featuring her original artwork paired with soulful and reflective messages and journal prompts. We're going to talk about today how she supports intimate journey of self-discovery and growth, and how she has overcome some of life's most challenging moments and come out the other side with an intense perseverance and love. This is a wonderful conversation, and I can't wait for you to dive in.
Hey, I'm Andryanna, and this is the Juggle is Real podcast. As I share my ongoing journey from experiencing burnout to leading a more mindful and intentional life with better balance, I hope you feel seen, that you realize your worth, lighten your load, and prioritize your own needs. As we hear from leading experts and well-known faces in the wellness, entrepreneurship, education, and motherhood space, I hope you gain insights, proven practices, and learn actionable tools to help you enjoy the juggle of work, family, and everything in between with a little less stress and a lot more ease, joy, and fun. Most of all, I hope you find what you need to simplify, streamline, and supercharge your own journey of better balance and self-love. Are you with me? Let's get started.
Welcome to the Juggle is Real. Zoë, thank you so much for taking some time with us today. How are you doing?
Really well, thank you. Yeah, thank you for having me.
I'm really excited about this conversation. We're going to get into some really good stuff. To begin, I would love to know a little bit about you. Can you tell us about your journey as a contemporary artist, as an industrial designer? How did you find your way into these beautiful creative fields?
Yeah, so I studied painting and drawing, and right after university, I started working full-time as an artist, and I've been working full-time as an artist, supporting myself and my family for 18 years now doing this. And
Wow.
in that time, I've lived in two places. So I was born and raised in Vancouver and had spent about 4 years in Montreal. About 9 years ago, we moved there so that our kids could learn French. And so it's professionally spent 4 years there and have been back home now for 5 years. So I not only studied it in high school at a fine arts high school, which was really specialized and a real blessing, and then was able to go on to study it in Montreal, and Mexico and South America a little bit as well.
That's incredible because I mean, being a Canadian, I live in Northern Ontario, but to have the opportunities in like some of the most beautiful cities in the world, especially in Canada, much must have been such an incredible way to delve into those fields. Did you always know that you wanted to be an artist? I mean, to go to high school, it was such a specialized place that must have been a knowing for you. But how did you, as a child, sort of tap into that creative side, or how did you know that that's what you wanted to pursue?
I just saw this quote this morning that I've had up and around and in my life for a long time by Rumi, and it said, "Let yourself be silently drawn by the strange things that you really love," or
Mm.
strange, you know. And so we kind of follow these things that we love. We love tennis, we love ballet, we kind of love firefighting. We just kind of follow this strange pull. And I have had really supportive parents. I think that supportive parents nurture those things, right? And the
Hmm.
means, like, let's be real, the means by which we were able to kind of follow them to the best of, our financial capacities as a young family, when we were growing up. So this is I just consider myself quite fortunate as well. And I think that those two things coincide. And that encouragement from my parents to, yeah, go for it. Yeah, go for it. That bravery, when you don't have it within yourself to initiate necessarily, or when you initiate to follow through, I think was nurtured.
That's incredible. I think for many of us, we're often told that we have to pursue a certain path because there's more guarantees, or it's, you know, our parents or who are very well intending think that we have, a better chance when we're pursuing things that are the safe bet. Any advice for someone listening who might have a beautiful creative soul that is looking to pursue their passion, but maybe there's a little bit of hesitation on their part for just allowing that to flow through?
I think if there ever were a time to encourage your child to follow creative pursuits, it's right now. Strangely, people, for example, who are graduating from master's programs in fine arts aren't necessarily, becoming full-time fine artists, but we see statistically that they're very well employed. And the reason is that we now more than ever need creative problem solving. So, my first answer to that would be, your child doesn't belong to you. They
Mm-hmm.
never belonged to you. And so they're this free, beautiful, moving, creative spirit that came out of you, and your job is to be bumpers. And so I think there is this real possessive quality in parenting sometimes that I notice, everywhere from the playground to now, as my teens are older. I have two teenagers who are 16 and 18. And so I've stood alongside a lot of parents who believe that they have some sort of say, or they have too heavy of a hand
Mm-hmm.
on their children's lives. And so your child is first and foremost a free spirit. And then you live in a culture where we value certainty or security or whatever. And if there ever were a time where we know that that's no longer, like, the wool has been pulled, the veil is thin. We've seen now that you go into coding, and then 100,000 jobs just got cut at Microsoft. Like, there's nothing is guaranteed. It never was. But I think for parents listening, it's a really important time to nurture creative problem solving. I think that's like the
Mm-hmm.
the biggest faculty, the greatest asset that we bring to communities and to human care.
I really appreciate you saying that. Thank you. Maybe we can talk for a minute about um, your own balancing act with art and business, because you're combining what can feel like two really different worlds. And the listener might be like, no, I would love for my children to pursue whatever passion they want, but I was told that I couldn't do that, and so I chose a path that was, maybe more structured or more guaranteed. What can you suggest for women, for entrepreneurs who are trying to look at those creative pursuits, or who are really trying to notice their passion and delve into more purpose versus just maybe, pushing the pencil, or doing something that they thought was a guarantee? Do you have any strategies for female entrepreneurs who are looking to maybe pursue something that's more creative, or have a business with that type of responsibility that you can share from your experience?
Yeah, there's sort of a few questions within that. And I think the first is, like, how do we cultivate bravery? How do we notice what it is that first and foremost that we love? And so I love tennis. Am I ever going to become a tennis star? Like, how am I going to monetize that and support my family and make over 120,000 a year? Like, so instantly, like, there's these logistics that come into play. And I think first, like, noticing not just for women, but for all of us, like to start to notice what it is that we love and to start to bring more of that into our lives and grant ourselves more permissions. And I think there's a really good book right now that's like kind of permeating the collective consciousness and kind of coming into the cultural conversation around this, which is, well, there was always Big Magic by what's her name? And I can't remember. Oh, Elizabeth, was that Elizabeth Gilbert? Big
Yes.
Magic?
Eat,
Yeah.
pray, love. Yes,
Yeah. And
yes. That
then,
was
yeah. So that was like a great start to this conversation. And I think that Rick Rubin's book, The Creative Act, is a really, and you know, if you don't want to read it, there's lots on his podcast, lots of interviews about him right now. And what he's ultimately getting at, I mean, I can't summarize that book, but he's asking us to kind of open up the channel, open up the vessel, play more often, like open up the antennae by which we can kind of receive playful information about creative pursuits that we may have wanted to pursue. And when it comes to monetizing those things, there's, you inevitably right away face some challenges. And I think one of the best things that I've done in my career is a lot of collaborations. So say you're really into your ceramics and your girlfriend's really into photography. Well, she should photograph your ceramics and then, you can promote her and she can promote you. And then maybe one of your friends is really into marketing and she's super bored at her job. So she can help you guys create a website. I think collaboration is the greatest gift when it comes, especially when starting out. Professionally, we still do it a lot at a higher level, and it's so fruitful. Like everybody can play to their strengths and stay in their lane.
I agree. I agree. Do you have any examples or maybe some challenges that you've faced in that balancing act between the two worlds of art and business and how you've learned to overcome it?
Yeah, I've hired smart young people to work for me because I have no idea what to do. I've had staff for about just one or two staff for about a decade now. And the first decade or 8 years or whatever, I did it by myself with my first husband. He helped so much. And it was you have to scrap it together when you're starting out. There's no way you can just hire someone. But when it got to that tipping point where I was like, I didn't have enough money necessarily to hire her, and we didn't really know what we were doing, but I hired Andryanna at 22, so a decade ago, and she's 32 now, and I just saw her recently, and we just figured out the job description by virtue of like what it was that I was either should no longer be doing, should never have been doing, didn't understand, and had been procrastinating on. We just started a list, and from that we created her job description, and from that, every subsequent staff person who's been my studio manager, that's like the main role running everything, they have created sort of like a Bible, like a book by which they train the next person. So we just really invented the position, and it's not rocket science. It's just a lot of stuff that I had outgrown, and then has allowed me to play to my strengths.
That's awesome. I think, yeah, one of the hardest things that we can do is relinquish control. But when we do that, we realize how much easier things can flow and how much more productive we can be and how much more we can tap into our own creative genius and do the things that we're really meant to be doing when we have the support of others. And regardless of whether that's in business or at home or in our personal lives, I think when we can learn to let go a little bit, I think that allows it to just open up so much more. And on that topic, and speaking of this book that you've recommended, The Creative Act, I know that you're a very spiritual person, and you believe that we all have this infinite access that we can tap into. Using your emotional and spiritual wellness, that's really a significant part of your life. And it does intersect with business and with personal life and with everything. Can you share a little bit about this and how it's influenced your life?
Yeah, thanks. Well, I had a strong inclination towards a spiritual life since I was very young. And I think there's a coming of age time. I've spent a lot of time doing some youth work. I have teenagers now, and I I love that moment where they're shedding the skin of being a child and becoming teenagers. And in that, there's a ton of resistance and rebellion and this sort of push against the parent. But what I experienced in that myself was that it was a longing to know yourself and your place in the world. And so I start there because it's like a starting point, an orientation. We're trying to orient ourselves as preteens and young teens. So at 12 years old, I had this strong feeling that there was more. I had, at the time, I was involved in a very like liberal, left-wing, super fun, kumbaya, lovely church. And from that place, I got to learn about mythologies and storytelling and, I gained access to this capacity to start to feel more than just what it was to be here in 3D, and this was a very meaningful time in my life, because it was sort of like seeing a UFO. Like you could then imagine that it doesn't exist for the rest of your life and be like, la, 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 la. But for me, it was like, it was this thread that I wanted to pull on forever. And it was kind of like, I can't unknow that this is now available to me. And so the reason it's been important, more so lately, is because, I've had a really rough last 3.5 years. And, I have this infinite access to this, energy source. And so at times it's gotten really dark, like low money, difficulty in relationship, whatever challenges that we all face here. Um, but I think that my secret sauce, or this sort of secret, that I've been able to cultivate this relationship with this higher power. And it's like been a source of sustenance. When things get really dark, it's like sometimes we're just scrambling around here on earth looking for stuff. I need more chips. I need more money. I need more this. I don't know what it is. And there's like this infinite space in ourselves that will never be filled. And I just feel so lucky to have not only found that, but I intentionally surround myself with a lot of people who remind me that, like, older mentor women or like my friends, it's like we all kind of remind each other that we have access to this. And I think it's been so nurturing and supportive and imperative, really, in business and in life.
I think it's really incredible that you understood it from such a young age and that you've been able to continue to cultivate your relationship with, the higher powers or higher goods or source or universe, whatever you want to call it. Because I think that, we don't realize it at such a young age because we are so in tune with what the 4D, what's beyond what we can sense and see and taste and touch and all of that 5 sense stuff. But until we perhaps face challenges or we have to learn very difficult lessons, maybe we're not looking for it, or maybe we forget that it's there, or maybe we've been told things that would, refute that type of additional spirituality. And you've spoken about your experience with addiction and the expansion that's possible on the other side of it. I'd like to talk more about your practices to maintain clarity and focus, but I think maybe it would be really helpful for the listener to hear about some of these challenges that you've faced, your journey in overcoming addiction, how it's influenced your life and your work. Maybe you can share some of that, and then we can talk a little bit more about the spiritual side and how we can all tap into that higher self of ourselves.
Yeah, I think it's important to kind of know where we've come from in order to see where it is that we are right now and where it is that we're going. So at around 35, so I'm 42 now, at around 35, I had been drinking, on and off, binge drinking, for 20 years. A lot of us start drinking around 14, 15. We sort of think that that's normal. And some people sort of dabble in that in their teen years and then maybe do a little bit of it in their 20s, and sort of it peters out maybe in your 30s. And for me, it was increasingly becoming a problem. And so, because like a lot of women, I drank privately, and my drinking increased when I had children. And I think that's important to mention because I know a lot of your listeners are mothers, or, excuse me, women. And statistically, women are drinking more and more and binge drinking. So The reason that matters is because it's often done privately. So you're not like out at the bar 7 nights a week or whatever. Maybe it's like a bottle of wine, and maybe it's not even 7 nights a week. It's just this like sneaky private thing. And in that, there's a lot of shame and a lot of suffering. So the reason that I talk about it at all is because I have experienced so much healing, which we will talk about. But also it's a family disease, the family suffers, whichever parent is drinking or if it's both parents. And this substance is so readily available. It's legally sold at every corner. So it's like, it's not like we're doing something that's a legal drug that's sold, in that's, this is out in the open. And yet my lived experience with it was that I was hiding it. And so, I was about 35. I felt like I was carrying my life uphill. Like my life was this burden. It was like so heavy. It was hard to get up in the mornings. It was challenging, all those things. And yet I still hadn't lost enough to like have hit what I would have called a rock bottom. And so I started to listen. At the time, Holly Whitaker and Laura McCohen were starting to open up new conversations outside of the AA program about drinking. And so they had a podcast at the time called Home together, and they were writing books like they've written Quit Like a Woman and other books as well. And they started to create this contemporary language that I started to recognize as, oh my gosh, that's me. And I started reading a lot. And through reading, I was able to privately recognize myself and see my struggles in this and realize that it was time for me to quit.
Okay. And so there was there a moment for you, or was it just with that additional awareness? Like, how was that introduced to you? Were you actively seeking it? Were you worried that there was a problem? Or did it just, come into your life through synchronicities and then you realized after that, you know what, maybe this is something that I should dig into a little deeper?
I think anyone who suspects that they're struggling or has Googled, am I an alcoholic? There's I smile now. It was so dark, right? But it's like you already know, it's e- there I was, and in the same breath, I do think it's so deeply disguised because I think it has a lot to do with the mythology around what an alcoholic really looks like, And so I think that in media, it's portrayed as like a man who's lost his job, who lives under a bridge, who's like in an AA meeting, in New York City, in a folding chair with a styrofoam cup and drinking bad coffee, So this is my lived experience now of being in recovery and or spending a lot of time with people who don't drink, across for a spectrum of reasons, from wellness to knowing that they have a total problem with it. It's like all walks of life, everyone, it's this is not particular to one type of person. And I guess to more specifically answer your question, I could start to see what a rock bottom would look like. And I had reached what I suppose was a spiritual rock bottom, but it wasn't even, it was actually in Holly Whitaker's manifesto. Her step one on her manifesto, on Hip Sobriety's website, was you do not need to hit rock bottom in order to quit drinking. And I think that granted me a permission that was like, I don't need to drive my car through a fence, or what is it that I would lose? And I started to get a
Mhm.
glimpse of what that could look like. Why would I have to lose all of that in order to recognize that this is a problem? And I think that grants people a lot of permission. And that's one of the reasons I talk about it, because if people are even slightly inclined towards quitting, I've seen people's lives completely change who weren't at any sort of rock bottom. They just got rid of it. And then they were like, whoa, like this is trippy. It's changed their life. It's changed their physiology. It's changed who they hang out with. It's like change their finances. It's like this weird magic that they're like, oh, I was only drinking like once a week or a couple of glasses of wine a week, and with certain people or at the tennis club or at this or at that. And then it's like, whoa, weird. And it's like completely changed them. So I've seen it work on multiple levels now for over 8 years.
Amazing. Thanks for being so open to talk about that and to share your experience. I think there's so many people who are in the same place that you were in 8 years ago who could use this contemporary notion of what support could look like, what's available, and how you can make that shift in a positive way to see that the beautiful change that you want to see. And you talk about this notion of, and I'm going to use air quotes, a life quake, not an earthquake, but a life quake. Was this that sort of life quake moment for you, or what is that notion of a life quake, and how can we make the pivot after that occurs in our own lives?
Yeah, that was like obviously a big undertaking to get sober 8 years ago. And it was like a slow, arduous, and also miraculous and instantaneous sort of thing that happened. So these two things kind of coincided at the same time. Like there was a day that I quit, whatever day that was, it was like that was the last day. And then there's also been this like deeper work for 8 years that's been, my friend Heather White, who's a life coach, she always says, um, even if you change your direction just by 1 degree,
Mm-hmm.
eventually you'll realize that you're in like this totally different place, which is really powerful. And so that's been that experience. But I think that the last 3.5 years, when there was like a huge shift in our household and our family, and all sorts of different things have happened, that from that time, and so very from a place of being very solid in my sobriety, I've, not only decided to persevere, or I don't know if I decided to persevere, I just had to persevere, stay
No
alive,
choice, right?
no choice. But also that, I created an Oracle deck, which we can talk about afterwards. But my whole career, for the listeners, for context, has been like producing beautiful, like high-end work for custom work for clients and private clients and interior designers. So I'm a painter. 99.9% of my income comes from painting. I'm also a rug designer and an industrial designer. And most recently, I've created an Oracle deck. And I mention that because what you're asking about is like, how do we pivot after a life quake, or how do we pivot after, things are disrupted? And we have to do two things. One is have practices that cultivate equanimity. So we have to just stay alive and return to our center. So through tapping, exercising, yoga, breathing, we have to first get well here, in the body.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise we can't function or do anything. And there was many, many, many days where I could barely function, and I needed my whole community to rally around, helping me create spreadsheets for what I was going to do, or help me clean my house, or just help me sort of spiritually and emotionally mostly just get by. So there's like staying alive. And then there is, okay, from that, there is an acknowledgement that I have a new set of values, and a stronger sense of spirituality. And for me, that meant more of a calling towards things like podcasts, public speaking. I just did my yoga teacher training. So I've always been called towards positions of sort of like light leadership, I would call it. And like not with a top down heavy sort of, but like cultivating community. I've always kind of done like I co-created a group for female entrepreneurs in 2007. Like I've always wanted to co-create the kinds of communities that it was that I felt I needed. And so I've gradually been stepping more and more into those roles. And through that, my life has become more rich. I've done more work in New York. I'm heading to the Hamptons this summer to co-collaborate on some different stuff around the Oracle deck, and hope to be leading retreats around the Oracle deck, heading down to the Baja in November. So this deck itself, the creation of it, is leading me to places that I couldn't have foreseen, but that are strongly tied to the strange pull of the things that I truly love, Rumi, again, to return to his quote, but also just hard work towards something that I think will be of service. So ultimately, this shift often happens at our 40s or midlife. I call it a midlife awakening. And it's not a crisis, but a crisis implies to be squeezed and to be from that, I think we can a lot of good there can be a lot of good fruits of our labor, and a lot of them look like being more of service and less selfish.
Absolutely. I want to know, like, I mean, let's not let the listener wait any longer because this oracle deck, it's called Vessels and Muses, and I'm so intrigued by it. I would love to know, what was the inspiration behind it? Was it sort of this life quake that has culminated into, all of the positive change that you've created for yourself? What How did this come together? Because you've mentioned most of your pursuits have been through painting and through different types of art. So what was that inspiration behind Vessels and Muses, and what do you hope that people will gain from using it? And
Yes.
actually, can you maybe share too, in case the listener doesn't know, what is an oracle deck, and how would a person use an oracle deck as well?
Yeah, so I'll just show you the box and we can open it if you want, but this is what she's referring to. And for those who are listening, it's a 40 card deck that includes 40 of my favorite paintings from the whole span of my career. And in it, it also includes a booklet that I've written. So each card has a visual, but it comes with a word. So it might say freedom or love or dive. And you could just pick that card and reflect on it in the morning. If you wanted to dive into the expanded meaning, there's a booklet. So it's also my first piece of published writing. And I mention that only because to encourage people, like, this is something that I've been secretly writing since I was 12 years old. Nobody's ever read it or seen it. I just started a Substack with some of my poems and an essay about parenting recently. And so this is just like, a lot of people see me and they think I'm very brave. And I have been, over the span in this one lane. But this is my first time that I'm revealing my writing, and so the deck also comes with one journal prompt with each card. So for example, I felt that people were longing to journal, but they weren't able to stick to it, and they didn't know where to start, or they'd start and then they'd always stop. And so my hope is that this deck supports people in taking time and having a moment of contemplation, introspection, and that my words can sort of somehow support them throughout their day. And also that they can come to know journaling as, like, it's been the greatest tool, one of the greatest supports that I've ever encountered in my sobriety, and then just in business and in life.
I love that you've combined the deck with also something that's action based, right? Like, so often, when you're using a deck, you can, shuffle it or hold it or ask a question or think of something in your mind of like what support might you need, or whatever it is that's kind of sort of in that hovering mode. And then, the card that you will choose, or the card that comes to you, is often like those words that you need, or that dose of inspiration or that motivation. So I think it's really incredible that there is a prompt there, that even if you're just taking a few moments, if there's not a lot of time in the day, like just 5 minutes to take to jot down whatever that means to you, or whatever comes from the thoughts or the reading that has been part of that deck. Do you want to do maybe a live demonstration or a reading? Maybe we can, summon some energy for the listener, or we can do it live, just the two of us, so that we can get a sense of what this is all about.
Sure, yeah. Well, I think I'll pull a card for you. How about that? Is that
Okay.
okay?
Yes, I'm ready.
So I'll show for those who are looking at the video. So we shuffled the deck, and I already shuffled it this morning. And then we would normally open it up, and we would, I don't know how we're gonna pull you a card. Maybe you're gonna have to say stop.
Yeah, I'll tell you when. Okay, and stop. There we go. She has them fanned out for me, and so I'm telling her which card to choose. And they are beautiful, by the way. I would just love to say that, like, this is incredible. Ooh.
You got the word sobriety.
Oh, amazing. Amazing. Sobriety. Very
Sobriety.
poignant for the topics that we've been
Yeah,
discussing.
for sure. So, sobriety, would you like me to read the meaning of it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So sobriety, the light of truth eliminates a brighter path. Life moves through the body, and the life force energy, or chi, are at times inhibited by interference. You want the body to be a starting place for telling the truth. While this card usually refers to cleaning or clearing the body of any excess substances, it can also be a call to eliminate distractions or confront challenging truths. Sober, in quotations, can refer to the raw, stripped back, honest reality of a situation. So this is a good time to think and to look clearly at what's in front of you. And your journal prompt would be, can I remove a substance or distraction in order to see my life and truth more clearly?
That's beautiful. Can I remove a substance
Or
or
distraction.
distraction to see my life more clearly? I will have to journal on that. Thank you so much,
My pleasure.
Zoe. That's beautiful. And the portrait that was on the card, did you want to describe it for us too? Because it was quite stunning.
Yeah, thanks. So the title of the deck is called Vessels and Muses, and it refers to two bodies of work. I have three bodies of work that I've done over my 18-year career. And landscapes are not included here, but I've done them for a long time and a lot of them for private clients. Vessels and muses refer to vessels. So the vessel is either a bowl or a cup or a vase, any sort of like container or holding space. And the muses refers to different the human form. I've done a lot of portraiture. And in that one, the figure is blue and they've got sort of like this beautiful energy kind of channeling up through their head. And what they're doing is, able to, because of sobriety, I guess, sort of able to access and channel different things. And that's what it refers to interference. It's not just about a substance, but it's just about like getting more clear. And so the word to be sober for me, it means like starting with reality. So if you think about we're in a car and we almost got in a car accident, but we didn't. And we say to each other, wow, holy cow, that was sobering. And all
Mm.
it does is just, all we're saying is like, whoa, that just brought me right into like this present moment and exactly what is here with us now. And oftentimes it's just the stark reality of the truth, of the starting place of the truth. So yeah, that's what that card is about.
I love it because as we're recording this, I'm literally surrounded by stuff everywhere. We're in the midst of a renovation, and so I'm thinking of like, and how can I, you know, release and remove things in order to make this process easier, right? In order to have the energy I need, to be well rested, to be able to still manage my kids and my home and all of the things, but also still be, doing this. And so I think it's been a sobering process. And B, I think that there are some distractions that I can remove, at least for this part of time right now, to ensure that I can, do the things I need to do to get this home back in tip-top shape. So I thank you so much and I appreciate it. To end our discussion, I really want to talk about some of these ways that we can care for ourselves and cultivate and harness our own creative energies. And I really like to talk about how we can care for ourselves in authentic ways and create practices that are sustainable, but also really true to ourselves to be supportive for ourselves. And so, we use the term self care, which can sound frivolous, but I know that you really do emphasize your own practices to feel well in your body and to ensure that you are tapping into your creative side and your spiritual side. How have your self-care practices helped you maintain the clarity and the focus that you need, both in your personal life and in your professional life, especially in this journey since, overcoming and going through your process with addiction?
Um, I do believe in self-care, and I really will answer that question and get there. I think it's worth mentioning, though, that we are meant to be cared for by a lot of different people. And so when we say it takes a village, for example, to raise a child, and we're like, okay, well, I don't have a village. I just moved here from Australia and I live in Northern Ontario. What am I supposed to do? Like I don't have a village. So I think I just want to acknowledge the ways in which we are meant to be cared for by community. And in our country, there's not, for example, in Vancouver, there's a real lack of daycare and it's extremely expensive. So that alone is bringing people to a brink or an edge or a level of stress or debt that is very hard to sort of self-care yourself out of. And so I think we need to acknowledge the lack of support as a starting place and just acknowledge culturally that it's challenging. And so one of the things that we've done well as a group of friends is we take really good care of each other. And so, for example, we have had a cold plunging practice that we've done for the last 4 years. We text each other, we make sure someone gets out of bed, we go give each other rides. When we're standing in the water, we say what we're thankful for. And then we know what's going on with each other. So we take care of each other through ensuring that we get out in nature, we get in the water, and we know about what's going on with your friends. I think telling the truth, like starting with letting your friends and your closest trusted people or your sobriety community or whoever it is, your religious community, know what's actually happening for you, I think is one of the most important things that has totally changed my life. You know, like I'm pretty real with people. But at points in this last couple of years, I've had to really tell them what's going on so that we can start there. Let's start with like how broke I am. Let's start with like how close I am to depression. Let's start with like, let's like really start with the truth. And so I think that really matters. And from that place, I've let people take care of me and nurture me. And you're absolutely right. I'm the only one who's going to exercise for myself. So at times I was like, I'd say to my son, I'm not exercising because I want to. I'm not exercising because I like this. I'm exercising because I'm literally in the dark. And if I don't do this, I'm going to stay here. You know, there's a time for resting and there's a time for rising. And it's like, I have literally saved my own life through exercising, yoga, breath work, you know, cold plunging. And those things are all available to us for very cheap and or free. And so I'm a real advocate because my mom was the head of Parks and Recreation for our community. And there's a lot of like very expensive Pilates classes that are not available to everybody. Not everybody can go for a jog in -20 weather, etc. I absolutely recognize that there's a lot of things that we don't have access to all the time. But I love to start with the question, what is available to me right now? And there's a
Mhm.
lot more available to you. And you can journal about that if your listeners want to start there. It's like, what is available to me right now? Anna has a home gym, or like Mike said he would help me jog, or Susan told me that she would take care of my kids anytime. We have to start with what's available to us when we're struggling. And most of us are struggling, like to some degree, you know, and
Yes.
we need to take better care of each other. And as a result, it's like I spend a lot of time checking in on my friends and reaching out to them and taking really good care of them. And so you kind of get what you give too.
Absolutely. Uh, you've touched on a lot of really important things. One that is especially important that you've really emphasized is your community and your friendships and your circle of influence, and your sobriety has shaped this. You know, your where you're living your life. How have you cultivated your community? And for the listener who might be struggling and might want to have someone to turn to, but they're not sure, do you have any advice for how they can, start to cultivate their own?
Yeah, I think I play a little bit of tough love here because it's like you have to be a friend. Be a
Sure.
friend. A friend is a verb. Like it is like you have to be a friend first. You cannot just like be, it's hard, it's lonely, it's sad. I had such a hard time making friends in Montreal when I was there for 4 years. So I acknowledge, and it's like people say this city is tough. Vancouver is like, it's not easy. It's not easy to make adult friendships. But after yoga, when you hustle back into your car, and then you're home and you're sad that you didn't make a friend. It's like you didn't include somebody, you didn't ask them out for coffee. Like you have to take action. And I think, especially in adult friendships, it's like, I love the people that I love. If I identify you as somebody that I want to be around, I'm like a stage 5 clinger, you know, it's like you cannot get rid of me. Luckily for you, it's like a decent stage 5 clinger. But I want, you know, it's our job to get excited about life and to join boxing, join something, you know, start volunteering. You want to, you feel like you're lonely and that your life is not, has no purpose, or you're tired or whatever it is, go be of service, because at the second you're of service, you're like, oh my gosh, I, one, have it so good. And two, like, you get to be in the soup kitchen with somebody else and be alongside others, like doing things, you know, seniors need so much love right now. Like there's so many ways in which we have to be that first, you know, and then we get sort of like the reciprocal, and just like bravery, you know, like I think of it sort of like dating. It's like, it's really challenging sometimes to be like, do you want to go on our first friendship date? You know, but
Yeah.
it's like, I call it going to second base. It's like platonic second base, but it's like, we're at yoga beside each other. Like, we should hang out. We should hang out. Like, stop saying that. Like, I will never say to someone, we should hang out. I'll
Right.
say to you either, see you later, or let's go for a coffee
Like,
now,
yeah,
today.
let's go
Like,
on Tuesday at 7 p.m.
yeah,
Yeah.
Tuesday at 7.
To
Like,
get it in the
I'm
books.
exactly like, this is not, life is, that is my pet peeve. It's like, we're not waiting, you know? I think I learned that from my time living in Nova Scotia. People on the East Coast are very like, what are you doing now? You know, let's go hang out. And it was oftentimes around drinking, which was fun, but it was like, even just coffees, or just like, come over to my house, my door is open. Like, people are always really surprised. I'm always like, come meet my parents, let's go hang out. Like, there's the intergenerational hangs, and my door is always open, and you have to be that as well if you want that.
I love that. So it's just putting yourself out there, get over it. Everyone's
Yeah,
thinking the same thing.
everybody,
And
yes, everyone's lonely. Everyone's
I love,
lonely. Yeah,
I love
everybody's
that.
going through the same things.
I love that. That's so great. Last thing that I want to ask you about is coming back to this notion of our spirituality and how we can really tap into the infinite. And you've mentioned throughout your journey, and you've always had this knowing. What can we do today to maybe recognize more of that side, whether it's using the vessels in Muses deck or journaling, or what is something that we can do to better recognize that we are infinite beings?
I think all of us have a friend who's kind of woo woo, you know, who's like
Yeah.
spiritual. We're like, that girl does Kundalini. What's that? Or, ooh, she went on some sort of, you know, tantra retreat. That sounds weird, you know, or just in daily life, I think just finding people that are like us. And we've noticed that there's a cold plunging crew. Usually people who are cold plunging, you know, or at yoga class, etc., are kind of a bit more spiritual. And so I think starting with prayer too, and meditation, like starting with your own practice and getting to know yourself quietly in that internal dialogue, and reading books. I mean, for me, I've read, like, reading is like, you have great access, and or listening to podcasts, like infinite access to Eckhart Tolle, or like even Tara Brach, or On Being. I love Krista Tippett. Like, she weaves spirituality into all of her conversations. Dax Shepard is not super spiritual, like centered in terms of the content, but it's like all over the place. But he's in recovery, and so I think we have this infinity amount of information available to us. And I think honing in on spiritual readings and practices, yeah, and doing the different things that sort of return us to that place.
I love it. And I love all of these resources that you've provided us with. I feel like we're going to have to go through in the edits and like write them all down, put them
Yeah,
in the
we'll put
notes
it in
for
the
this
show notes.
episode. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Zoe, I've loved chatting with you today. It's been a lot of fun. I feel like I've learned a lot. And I'm so grateful for the reading that you did for me with Vessels and Muses
Mm.
deck. Where can our listeners find more about your work, and how can they connect with you online and get this new deck that you've created?
Mhm. So everything can be found just with my name, Zoe Pawlak. So Zoë Pawlak at Zoë Pawlak on Instagram. You can DM us on Instagram. It's all available. It's all there on the website. And they can find the deck there as well.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for spending time with us here at the Juggle is Real.
My pleasure.
So many incredible takeaways that I am leaving this conversation with. And I'm so grateful that Zoe and I had a chance to sit down and chat and go through this beautiful oracle deck that she's created, do a reading, and just learn a little bit more about how we can live more mindfully and more intentionally, whether it be through our creative pursuits, in our personal lives, in our professional lives. And I really appreciate the prompt that she left us with, and that is, what is available to me right now? And just as we close this episode out, I'll remind you that it's a question that you can ask yourself, that you can journal on, that you can maybe think to yourself before you go to bed tonight, and awaken with the answer, or write down what that is. And it's, to me, also that notion of gratitude, like what is available to me right now? What can I focus my efforts on? What can I be in tune with? And what can I be grateful for in this very moment, today, here and now? If you enjoyed this episode, I would really appreciate you sharing it with a friend, someone who could use this dose of beautiful realism that Zoe has imparted on us. And if you could rate this episode, write me a short and sweet review in Apple Podcasts, it would help others who are juggling and who could really benefit from hearing this episode as well. And like always, please subscribe and come back and share on your socials. Do all of the things. We've got lots of great episodes in store for the rest of your summer. So please come back. I can't wait to see you here for another episode of The Juggle is Real. Until then, take good care.